Hi, I'm Sam Simpson. I'm CEO of Founder Catalyst and an angel investor myself. Delighted to be here today talking about all things SEIS and EIS. So let's start. What does SEIS and EIS mean? Well, firstly, they are tax relief schemes offered by the UK government to startups predominantly in the UK and to angel investors who are certainly in the UK and UK taxpayers. There are two schemes that I'm going to talk about. The first is SEIS, or Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, and the second is EIS, or just Enterprise Investment Scheme. SEIS is the little brother, if you like. It's used for very, very early stage companies for the first couple of years they've been trading. And then you move on to EIS, or Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is the big sister. And that allows companies to raise much more over a much longer period. So why do you as an angel investor care about these schemes? They are absolutely amazing. The tax breaks are just ridiculously good. Let me bring those to life. There are 4 different benefits for you as an investor. The first being upfront tax relief. I'm going to use a worked example through this to bring it to life. If you put £10,000 into a business under SEIS, then almost immediately the government will give you £5,000 or 50% of your money back. Genuinely amazing. The second benefit is capital gains tax exemption. So as long as you have invested in the business and you hold the shares for at least 3 years, and as long as the company continues to qualify, you've put £10,000 into a business and say a business exits after 5 years and they exit and your shares are worth £1 million. In any other walk of life, you would end up paying a whole bunch of capital gains tax on the difference between the £10,000 and the £1 million. Under the SEIS and EIS schemes, there's no capital gains tax to pay at all. It's completely capital gains tax exempt. The third benefit I'd like to talk through is loss relief. So if you invest under SEIS and EIS, then the government will give you some of your money back. What that means under SEIS specifically is you put £10,000 in, you've already had £5,000 back. You actually are just risking, after the loss relief, 28% or £2,800 out of your £10,000 investment. The final benefit I'd like to talk about is slightly less cheery, and that's inheritance tax relief. If you invest and you hold your shares for at least 2 years and then die, then the shares you own will pass to your estate outside of the inheritance tax calculations. There's no IHT to pay on those shares, and that's going to save your estate something like 30% on that inheritance tax bill. So first we've covered SEIS. The benefits of SEIS are absolutely clear. The downsides are a startup can only use SEIS for the first 3 years from the date they start to trade, so it can only be used for a limited timescale, and also they can only raise up to £250,000 under that scheme as well. So then you move on to EIS, or the Enterprise Investment Scheme. The tax breaks are good, but just not quite as great as SEIS. I'll use exactly the same example. Imagine I invest £10,000 into a startup under the EIS scheme. The government gives me back 30% or £3,000 in that example. So not quite as great as the 50%, but still pretty good. Capital gains tax and the inheritance tax exemptions are identical. There's no difference between the two schemes. And the loss relief is proportionally less as well. So you get less upfront relief and you get proportionally less loss relief as well, but still an amazing scheme. The benefit of the EIS scheme over SEIS is you can raise much more over a longer period. So startups can raise up to £10 million over the first 7 years from the date of the first sale of the company. So just amazing for both startups and investors in the UK ecosystem. There's another concept I wanted to introduce at this stage, and that's something called advance assurance. And this is really, really important for you to understand as an investor. Advance assurance is the proof that a founder can give you that the company you may invest in is eligible under the scheme. Otherwise, you've got no way of knowing. Everybody could say they're SEIS and EIS eligible, and you just don't know. So the nice people at HMRC offer something called advance assurance, where a founder applies for advance assurance. They've got lots of hoops to jump through, and it's a pretty unpleasant process. But as long as they succeed, they get an email back from HMRC which says, yay, you've got advance assurance. And that will give you as an angel investor comfort that any investment you make should benefit from the tax reliefs you would expect. As an angel investor, there are 4 things that I look for from every founder when I'm starting to look at an opportunity before I even go into due diligence. And those 4 things are, firstly, I'll expect a pitch deck. Secondly, I'll expect a forecast. I will want to see the term sheet so I understand the terms under which I'm investing, and we'll cover those in another video. And finally, I'll expect to see the advance assurance. It's a really bad look for me if any investor approaches me and they haven't got one of those 4 items in place, because it basically means they're not ready to do a funding round. They're ill-prepared for a funding round, which isn't a great look. Anyway, what I wanted to cover next is around the process. So what does it look like when I invest, and then what happens to allow me to claim after that? The only thing I expect from a founder up front, and the only thing you can ask for, is a copy of their advance assurance. You should check that carefully to make sure that the dates are correct, that it covers the right legal entity, and that it covers the amount that the founder is raising. When you invest in the business, then there is nothing to do differently. You should check that your shares are allocated as SEIS, EIS in the paperwork. But other than that, you just invest as if you were a non-SEIS or EIS investor. Once the funding round closed, the founder has a bunch of paperwork to catch up on. So they've got to do some formalities, such as registering the shares using an SHO1 on Companies House. They've got to register the Articles of Association on Companies House as well. Every founder should know how to do this. It's very straightforward. One thing they also need to do, and this is very specific to SEIS and EIS, they need to go through a process called compliance and certification. So when the founder can, and there are some rules, they can't do it on day one, straight after the investment usually, they need to have either spent 70% of the money or been trading for 4 months. So one of those tests need to be met. The founder can then go through the start of the claim process for you as an investor. The first thing they need to do is file a form called an SEIS or EIS1 or an SEIS certificate. The first thing the founder needs to do is file a compliance statement, which is the SEIS or EIS1 form. This notifies HMRC that shares under the scheme have been issued. HMRC will then review this and send back to the founder something called an SEIS2 or an EIS2, which is just confirmation that HMRC agree, and the founder can then issue SEIS and EIS certificates. You will then receive from the founder something called an SEIS3 or an EIS3, which then allows you to claim the tax relief from the taxman. All of those responsibilities are those of the founder, so there's nothing you can do, but make sure you're aware of the process so you can chivvy the founders along. It's very easy for a founder to take your £20,000 or whatever and then worry about the admin and paperwork. That's easy for them, but it means that you can't claim the tax relief that you're expecting. And you will be very glad to hear there's no SEIS or EIS4 form. Thanks for watching this video. I guess to summarize, SEIS and EIS are a no-brainer. If you're a UK angel investor investing in UK businesses, it would be ridiculous to not make use of those schemes if they're available. And to give you an example, I've got 32 investments. I've never made an investment outside of one of those two schemes. They're that good. Another tip, make sure you see a copy of the advance assurance before you invest. Otherwise, you may find you've invested in a business and you don't get any of those tax reliefs that you're expecting. I love talking about this stuff. We've got lots more resources below from a founder and investor perspective on how to make use of the scheme, but I hope this has been useful.